Welcome to Mindfulness Lists. The next sections of A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle that I'm going to go over are temporary roles, the monk with sweaty palms, and happiness as a role versus true happiness. Temporary roles, what could that mean? Here's what Eckhart Tolle says. If you are aware enough to be able to observe how you interact with other people, you may detect subtle changes in your speech, attitude, and behavior depending on the person you're interacting with. How could that be? Because you're playing roles. You know, you get up in the morning, maybe if you have kids, you're playing the enforcer, get up, make your bed, eat your breakfast, brush your teeth, blah, 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 blah. Get to work, you're playing those roles. You get off for lunch, and then you go play the role of the customer at the local deli. Just all that different stuff that we do. And I think you think about this stuff, and there's a lot of different, we're just talking about, I think what it was called was the different faces of the ego. Is that the name of this one? Let me go back. The Many Faces of the Ego, Chapter 4. And so we're going over it with a fine-tooth comb. And it's not that necessary. We've checked it out, and if you probably have a IQ of 5, or if you're 5 years old, you can see what's going on. Yeah, I've repeated it over and over and over. I'll say it once more. Ego is identification with form. So, probably just being aware of this stuff, that's all that it takes. Once you're aware of it, you can identify things. And it's a major part of what comprises our identity, is what we identify with. And so we went over it a lot. I'm just going to start skimming through things a little bit quicker so it's not too painful and I don't sound too redundant. I know that you know how to identify it now. So when we make up these roles, we have a picture of who we are, an idea of who we are. And then we have an idea of who the other person is. And so these roles become very contrived and very limited. And I think part of it is because the way that the brain works, really. Most people, if you've studied stuff like or read about neuroplasticity, we develop these pathways in our brains. And so these neural pathways, what happens is they get developed and we use them over and over and over. And so that's probably part of why we're such habitual creatures. You wake up, you go to the bathroom, you do just certain things, and it's helpful because you can just you could just go on autopilot and you really don't have to pay attention to what you're doing. When you're cooking breakfast or if you're eating cereal or something, you just do the same thing every single morning. You drive to work, you drive the same way to work. Same things. You're drinking from the same coffee cup, same stuff all the time. And so that's probably part of it as well. So just being aware of this stuff, it's okay. You do the same stuff all the time. It's comfortable. But just being aware when we fall into these roles with people, with our friends and with children, it's a relief to not have to uphold these roles, and surrounding yourself with people that are very forgiving and understanding and laid back is a good thing, because then you don't have to play this constant part. It's just way too draining. Just let go of that need to be somebody. You are perfectly fine the way you are, and you don't need to play a role to get what you want. Just be yourself and ask for what you need from people in an honest way. And if they can't give it to you, find it elsewhere. It's fine, and it'll just free you up. It's a lot of energy, just wasting this energy playing, being It's like we're characters in this huge play constantly. And another thing to be aware of is, we talk about these things, the things we're talking about, whatever they are, neurological aspects of us, or psychological, or ecological. I'm just kidding. I just made up that word. We become aware of these aspects so we can live better lives, so we could have more peace, so we can maybe do a little bit better. The thing about the circle of giving and receiving, being a better person, trying to do better things for others, is that you always have to be included in that circle of giving and receiving. And if you're not included, then it doesn't work. The well runs dry if you're just giving. So definitely include yourself, and don't, these things, they're not problems. In this book, I love this book, but the way that sometimes Eckhart Tolle talks about these things is problems. And you look at it and it's a relative truth. You look at it from a certain point of view, and yeah, it is a problem when people are super phony, or when they're really identified with whatever, with that they're a man, or that they're a race car driver, or that they're a supermodel, or that they have a certain amount of money. And just balance is where it's at, with these things. And just being very nurturing, mainly to yourself. Because what I find, and I don't mean to push my experience on you, but what I find is I'm a lot easier on other people than I am on myself. And you need to take care of yourself first. You have to be healthy in order to help the world, in order to spread love. It needs to be you first. You're in the airplane and the airplane is going to crash. You put on your oxygen mask first. So put on your metaphorical oxygen mask and be compassionate to yourself about these things. They're not problems. They're the human condition. These things, these characteristics, these personality traits, they're in everybody. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's not just Eckhart Tolle. I'll read you a little story here. I'll stop rambling for a second. This next section is super small. It's called The Monk with Sweaty Palms. Kasan, a Zen teacher and monk, was to officiate at a funeral of a famous nobleman. As he stood there waiting for the governor of the province and other lords and ladies to arrive, he noticed that the palms of his hands were sweaty. The next day he called his disciples together and confessed he was not ready to be a true teacher. He explained to them that he still lacked the sameness of bearing before all human beings, whether beggar or a king. He was still unable to look through social roles, conceptual identities, and see the sameness of being in every human. He then left and became the pupil of another master. He returned to his former disciples 8 years later, enlightened and ready to roll, baby. I don't know, maybe I'm kind of a dork, but I don't really put people up on a pedestal. I experienced that. I got into yoga about 20 years ago, and I've had some incredible yoga teachers. And the thing about it was, the ones that were really great, they were just super, super normal people. I studied under this dude. His name was Arturo Pio. And this guy was such an incredible master. Just like, you look at people, you have certain idols, I guess you would call it. Or, he was basically my idol. And the thing about it was, he was just such a humble dude, yet he was incredible. He was an Aikido master. He studied Chinese medicine as well. He was a cranial sacral therapist as well. And he taught anatomy, and he was a yoga teacher. So he was just a master of like 5 different things, of things that are not easy to learn. And he was such a humble, kind person and just a great teacher. And people like that, they just, I don't know, they really stand out, and they're such a good example of how you can be awesome and you don't need to be pompous. Other people, it's like we were talking about before. It's probably just good to have a balance. Yeah. Once in a while, you need to assert yourself and, put on your boots and get to work. But other times, life doesn't require that much. Most of the things that we know, we could just put it on autopilot, and we don't have to play the part. We don't have to be the teacher. We don't have to lecture. So anyways, I'll quit tooting my horn about that stuff. Happiness as a role versus true happiness. I'll read for a second. How are you? Just great. Couldn't be better. True or false? In many cases, happiness is a role people play, and behind the smiling facade, there is a great deal of pain. Depressions, breakdowns, and overreactions are common when unhappiness is covered up behind a smiling exterior and brilliant white teeth, when there is denial, sometimes even to oneself, that there is much unhappiness. It's one of the most important things to me. I'm getting off the point, but happiness and peace, they're so dang important. That's my goal in life, is just to be at peace. I find it's part of our culture, though. He goes on to talk about this thing about happiness, and in other cultures, it's not, people aren't like, hi, good morning, just saying good morning. And it's really strange. The restaurant that I work at, I've told you guys before, it's a Thai restaurant, and everybody that works there besides me and a couple people are Thai. And in their culture, it's different. They don't say thank you, and it might seem kind of weird, but they're just really more business. And you look at some of these cultures, and their cultures obviously are way older than ours. And so they been doing this stuff for thousands of years, to whereas America, it's just, a couple hundred years old. So the things that we do, they probably come from somewhere, their origins, I don't know where they come from. But the thing about this dry cut thing, and I'm sure, people have experienced this. I'm sure you've traveled and you go to other places and it's different. Their traditions, people's traditions, they're different everywhere. And I kind of like it, because being a waiter, you're in the service industry, and it's constantly please and thank you, when you're helping people. And I get drained, I don't mind doing it, but at the end of the day, after I've waited on 100 people, I don't feel like a jerk after that, but I'm definitely, kind of out of please and thank yous. I'm just ready to cruise and just, relax. To whereas with my coworkers and stuff, they'll say please and thank you just because they know that it's, our tradition. But between each other, there's no please and thank you. And it's just stuff's a lot more. It's just business. And it's kind of cool, because then, I don't have to be Mr. Politeness with my coworkers, with my boss, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that there's not that there. Because you paste on this big fake smile on your face, and you're ready to wait on people. And I'll walk away from the table and I'll just think, what in the hell am I smiling about? Although I really do enjoy my job. I really do. I think, as I've mentioned, I'm not a Buddhist, but in the Eightfold Path, which is kind of like the commandments of Buddhism, the 10 commandments, but there's only 8 commandments in Buddhism. They couldn't think up of an extra 2. I'm just kidding. One of them is having a good job, just having a job that doesn't, doesn't mess with other people's lives, not being whatever, drug dealer. And I think that my job is a very good job like that. I think that providing people with good food and good service, and, it's just a huge part of our life. It's like what most people think of. What am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? And what am I going to have for dinner? And I think that's a very wholesome thing to be doing, and I'm thankful. So I think I'm going to leave it off for the day. That's pretty good. And just be aware of these things. And when you catch yourself falling into these roles, just save yourself. Save yourself the energy. It's draining. You can do it without it. You don't need to uphold that role. You just be yourself and everything will be okay.
Time is an angel or devil, best friend or worst enemy. Great joy